Welcome to another episode of Crosstalk. My name is Kevin Tocci. I will be your host for the next 30 minutes. Now, as you have come to expect from this program, we do our best to try to mix it up from time to time, whether we're speaking with someone from the community, it could be in political nature, let's say upcoming town meeting, it could be a fun event that's coming up, like some of the things that both Whitman and Hanson do. And of course, as I say, Whitman and Hanson, those are the two communities that we do our best to represent when we have someone come and sit in the chair next to me. We're very privileged today to have Andrea Rounds. She is the director of the Whitman Public Library, and she's here to talk with us about some very fun stuff that is going on at your public library. How are you? Welcome back to Crosstalk.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
I have to say is that for library directors, you might have broken the record.
I may have.
You may have, and we're not done yet. We're going to have you back on more times. First and foremost, how are things over at the public library these days?
Oh, things are going great. This has been a long, hard winter for everyone, but if you come and check out a book, even if you're snowed in, at least you'll have a book. So we've been doing a lot of business.
Folks don't realize you guys are more than just books. I mean, I believe you still do DVDs, you have all kinds of things that folks can go on over, your computers, so it's more than you have great activities for anybody from 6 to 66 and beyond.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there's something for everybody at the library.
Now, I know that not too long ago, you were visiting the Whitman Selectmen, and you made an announcement. I think you kind of shared with them this new reading program. You got something going on called Whitman Reads. What is this?
Whitman Reads is a town-wide reading program, and what we aim to do is connect everyone in the community around a central book, and conversations that you can have with people when you're reading the same material and you find things interesting are really uniting in a town. So it's nice that you could talk to the car mechanic or your hairdresser or the mom next to you when you're not really sure how to break the ice. Sometimes you notice that they're reading the same book as you. You can have a great conversation with them. So this is an activity that everyone can participate in, and we're so, so proud to be putting on Dark Tide by Stephen Puleo. This book is about the Great Boston Molasses Flood of 1919, which I had no idea about before I started reading this book.
Until you walked into the Selectmen's meeting a couple of weeks ago, I had no idea.
Well, it's fascinating, especially since we're so close to the North End. In 1919, there was this huge tanker that was on Commercial Street in the North End, and it was filled with molasses. They used to make industrial alcohol out of molasses, and this was right after World War I, so they needed a lot of munitions, and they used a lot of this molasses. It would come in on tanker ships into Boston, and they stored it right in the middle of this Italian neighborhood next to the firehouse and the lumberyard and the boarding houses. And they built it really poorly. And one night, in the middle of the night, it collapsed. And a wave of molasses, 15 feet tall, went rushing down the streets of the North End, collapsing buildings, killing animals, people, horses.
Oh, goodness.
And it was really a tragedy. Now, in this time, there were several things going on. Prohibition was happening, and the anarchist movement in the United States was happening. Yeah. So around this time, the Sacco and Vanzetti trial was going on, and there was a real fear that anarchists would blow up targets. So terrorists, essentially, would be targeting populated areas. And the company who built this tank tried to blame the shoddy construction and the collapse of the tank and all the damage and death that was caused by it on Italian anarchists bombing their molasses tanker.
I know this is, people lost their lives, there's property damage when it was way back when, but when I think of molasses, the first thing I think of is a phrase that was said to me as a little guy, and that is, you're slow as molasses. Well, evidently, molasses was not slow that day, and nor was it, nor did it discriminate as to who it hurt or harmed.
When you have 2.3 million gallons of molasses, it moves very quickly. It went 35 miles an hour, and there was a wave 15 feet high.
It's like a tsunami wave of molasses.
And it went right down through the north end. Lots of people have told me, and I had no idea, but people have come in and spoken to me about how the north end will still smell like molasses on hot summer days. So it's interesting. If you go down to the north end during the summer months, really hot day, you might still hear it, smell it.
How did you pick Dark Tide? Was this some kind of a, did you put it out there to staff and patrons? How did it come to be that you get Dark Tide? So
we chose Dark Tide this year internally as a staff and with the Board of Library Trustees. We picked it as an inaugural sort of re-energizing of the Whitman Reads program. We're hoping to do this annually and have a Whitman Reads annual event. Next year, we're going to form a committee and ask for people to be involved with the book selection process, and that book topic will be top secret until it's revealed.
Wow.
And stay tuned for more of that. We'd welcome participation from the community on suggestions for that title. We are the 22nd town or city in Boston or in Massachusetts, rather, that has picked this title. So the Dark Tide is very popular for a townwide reading program selection.
So I believe that other than having it be something that folks can read and maybe accidentally find out that they're part of Whitman Reads, you have a series of events that are kind of also tied to this as well, correct?
We do. We have lots going on in the library, outside of the library. Over the next several months, we'll be having an installation in the library. It's up now. If you visit us in the foyer of the library, we've created a brand new space where there was once a coat rack. There is now an art space. And we have put some beautiful, though tragic, images of the disaster. There's several close-up shots of the firefighters who worked very, very hard to free some of the firefighters that were trapped in this tragedy because the firehouse was swept away by molasses. And you can see the detail in these images in the library currently of a ladder with molasses dripping down it. It's terrifying when you look at it. That's going to be on display in the foyer and throughout the building throughout the next few months. Then we also have the author coming to speak at the library. Now, Stephen Puleo wrote several other award-winning books. He wrote The Boston Italians, and he also wrote The Caning. This book, Dark Tide, is a fascinating book. If you've read any of his other materials, or you just want to learn more about that, please come to one of the author events. They're free. Thank you to the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District for letting us use the high school, because that's where we're going to have Stephen Puleo come in a few weeks. And then for people who can't make it over to the high school, we're going to have him come back at the end. That's probably when a lot of people who haven't finished the book yet might show up. But come to the high school even if you haven't finished it.
What are you looking forward to as far as when the author shows up? I mean, do you have questions of your own? Are you curious as to, what he will kind of give in details? When you have an author show up, I mean, what are some of the things that you look forward to as a director or someone who, loves the library?
I really get excited when authors come and talk about their work because they get so passionate and excited. If you devote hours and hours of your life researching an event and a historical event like this, creating a wonderful book that retells it, you have a passion and an interest that you can really convey in person. There will be fascinating stories, I'm sure, about individuals, because there were many documents that were found about individuals that survived this event through the court case and the lawsuit that happened afterwards. So that will be fascinating. And I'd also just like to ask him why he was interested in this topic. What sort of spurred him to investigate this? Because before Stephen Puleo wrote this book, there really were no other books about the Great Boston Molasses Flood of 1919.
Now, when did this book get released?
It was released in 2003.
Okay.
And up until very recently, the theories that Stephen Puleo put forward about the reason why the tanker collapsed was given as fact. People thought that that was exactly the truth and it was settled. However, in January of this year, there was a Boston Globe article coming out releasing new documents. Ronald Mayville, who is an engineer in Cambridge, or excuse me, in Waltham, he has discovered a trove of documents that point to another reason why the tanker collapsed. And lucky for the library, we have Mr. Mayville coming. He has very generously offered to come in and shed some new information and some new light on this tragedy. So it's not a dead and dusty subject. People are still investigating this.
It's interesting that this is something that it nearly took a century for someone to put this kind of research and work, and then to, you know, articulate it into words for someone to be able to read and see all the documents, see all the stuff, and seeing that this is something that is still, you know, it's still coming, it's coming to life, you know, almost 100 years later.
Can I make a confession?
Just a small one.
Small one. I don't usually read nonfiction.
Really?
I usually gravitate towards fiction, perhaps of the romance variety.
Oh.
When I am, you know, done being a mom and working hard, I like to relax, and I read sort of lighter fare. I loved this book. This is a history book that reads like fiction, because it's not told in that stuffy sort of way that I think of when I think about history books. It's a drama. It unfolds in this book. It's a whodunit, a mystery, and it happened in the North End. So you can go down into Boston and see the destruction and where it all occurred. I just think it's wonderful.
Now, you talked about meeting the author. What kind of other fun things do you have coming up over the next couple of months that the whole family can participate in? Oh,
we have great events. We have an adult craft, molasses cookies in a mason jar.
Oh, boy.
Our assistant director, Molly Klanowski, who does the most wonderful craft programs. I mean, she just does such a great job. She has found a way to make molasses cookies in a mason jar without getting the molasses all sticky with the wet and dry ingredients. I have no idea how this is possible.
It's called patience.
Right.
Something I don't have much of these days. So.
But she's going to do that, so you can call the library and sign up for that craft.
Nice.
And we also have a really interesting way to involve science and engineering into a program for children. We are going to have children at the library build a model of the North End with popsicle sticks and then flood it with molasses.
Oh my.
Yeah, it'll be a little sticky.
We might have to have a camera there.
Yeah, you might. It should
Paul
be fun.
Watson there and capture this footage.
It'll be a great time. We have an event for teens where teens get to make their own molasses cookie dough, and they can get it all ready, and then all they have to do is take it home and pop it in the oven. And we'll have molasses story time, molasses pajama story time. Right. So we'll be reading stories and then having molasses cookies before bed. I know you mentioned that you like molasses cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of molasses, good-smelling gingerbread in the library. So
Just pop by.
You should. You should.
Now, if somebody wants to find out more information about Dark Tide, maybe where they can pick up a copy or these events, I'm sure that there's a place and a way for them to do that, correct?
Yes. You can check us out online at whitmanpubliclibrary.org, or you can always follow us on Facebook. We do a lot of posts about our activities, reminders, letting people know on Facebook and Twitter that we're having an event at a certain time. I know as a busy mom, it's helpful for me to get a little alert that something's going on. So they can do that. I would like to say, Kevin, this entire project has been funded by the Friends of the Whitman Public Library. The work that these few dedicated people do on behalf of this entire community is outstanding. And I just really would like to recognize them and thank them.
Absolutely.
The books that we have at the library are available to check out free, or if you'd like to own your own copy, you can buy a copy at the library. The proceeds will go to support the Friends of the Whitman Public Library. They are at a discount. The book usually sells for $16 and the Friends are selling it for $12. So you can buy a copy at the library, take it with you. We will have, or the Friends will have some at the author events for book signings right there on the spot.
Okay. Before we move on, because we're already halfway through the program, do you want to tease them a little bit with a passage from the book? Would you like to?
Sure. Okay. Shortly after noon on January 15th, 1919, a 50-foot tall steel tank filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses collapsed on Boston's waterfront, disgorging its contents in a 15-foot wave of molasses that traveled at 35 miles per hour. The Great Boston Molasses Flood claimed the lives of 21 people and caused widespread destruction. For the first time, the story of the flood is told here in its full historical context. So you'll have to read the book to find out more about the intriguing whodunit mystery and the eventual lawsuit that occurred afterwards.
It's very poetic of you. I like the way you kind of did that. Speaking of, what a great segue. I believe you got the annual poetry contest coming up.
Oh yes, it's our 5th year having an annual poetry contest at the library. April is National Poetry Month, and we love to encourage literature and arts, and poetry is such a creative outlet for so many people. So in honor of Poetry Month, we have an online submission that will be going up in April for patrons to submit their poetry, and we've had some great poems in the past win. We'll have 3 categories. We're going to have a lower school for the younger kids, an upper school, and an adult category. The 3 categories will each have a first, second, and third place winner, and everyone will be invited at the end of the month to come and have an award ceremony where we will invite the winners of the poetry contest to read their works aloud. You don't have to be able to come and read your works aloud to win, but we'd love it if you could share it with us.
Now, how will it be judged? Is it a certain way that it's judged?
Yes, we have a panel that will judge. We use a rubric. We are looking for clarity of voice, creative content, and several other factors. In the past, I have judged along with several members of the community. We have some friends of the library, some volunteers, and one particularly excellent staff member who has a love for literature. But we do not have our children's librarian or our adult services librarian judge because we don't want them to have to play favorites or deal with sad people if they lose.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, especially the little ones.
Yes.
But you know, everyone's welcome to participate. This year we'll have an online submission form, or we will have some printed forms in the library for people to fill out. Everything is anonymous. We do require that you submit your poem, if you're going to do it in print, with 1 copy with your name and 1 copy without, so that when the copy goes to the judge, they won't have to see your name and it'll all be fair.
Okay. Very nice. Let's talk a little bit about a grant that the library received called the Full Steam Ahead Grant. How is that going?
Oh, wonderful, Kevin. Thank you so much for asking. We were awarded a LSTA grant, which is money from the federal and state government, to put on a series of programs throughout this year for preschool students that have to do with STEM and the arts. So we have bought many materials for our actual collection. Miss Nicole is running a Full Steam Ahead program on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month, or maybe it's Thursday. Check our website for more information. And the children will explore different topics each session. They'll do volcanoes one week, then they'll do music and movement. There's just a whole host of activities that we'll be having for the children at the library with this wonderful grant that we were able to get.
Now, talk to me about some of the things that you've been able to acquire. I guess something like playaways? Oh,
the playaways are fabulous. If you've never used a playaway before, it's a self-contained unit. We have audiobooks and videos now preloaded on an indestructible device. So these are built just for children so that they can drop them. You could maybe get them dirty, and they're really hard to damage. They're preloaded with titles like The Magic School Bus and Sesame Street, and all of the topics have to do with science, technology, engineering, art, or math. The kids are really responding very, very well. We've had a lot of children discover one and then check out every single other one that we have. They're learning a variety of topics. My 6-year-old loved it when I took one home for her. She just thought it was fascinating. And it's so great when you see the kids because they actually get a lot of value out of learning how to use the technology themselves. So you hand them a touchscreen device or a device that has, an audio jack, and just that experience of finding the power button, finding the rewind, fast forward, those are all skills that they're learning every day. So it's important for them.
What's the most popular playaway right now? Is there a particular one?
Oh, I couldn't pick, but I have to say I do prefer the Magic School Bus. I mean, those are just awesome books. There's a whole, do you know the Magic School Bus, where there's a teacher that shrinks her class and they drive the school bus through different parts of the human body, through the ocean. It's a wonderful, they made a television series of it, but the books are fabulous. So.
Okay. And the kids pick it up quickly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the concepts are just so easy for them to handle. It's amazing when you see a piece of technology that might take me 15 minutes to figure out how to be really comfortable with.
10 minutes.
And they're just growing up with it. But not everyone has access to these materials at home.
Right.
And so one of the roles that the library plays is before kids get to kindergarten, this early literacy, this early exposure to technology really helps, especially for those that may not have it at home. So we've recently purchased computers for preschoolers that will teach them how to program. So these little children can come into the library, sit down at a computer, and learn how to program.
Wait, is this the Raspberry Pi computers, or
yes.
P-I, not like pie like you eat?
Right.
Yeah.
Next week is National Pie Month, National Pie Week.
Really?
Yes. We're going to have some pie at the library.
And how did the library discover the Raspberry Pi computers?
They're actually a fairly popular new technology that's entering the educational world. They have them in the schools here in Whitman and Hanson. They're gaining more and more popularity at libraries. They are cost prohibitive, so we were only able to purchase them because we were awarded this fabulous grant. Right. And they've just been very popular.
Do you not marvel at some of these things? You talk about the playaways, and now we're talking about the Raspberry Pi computers. Do you not marvel at how our children are learning, how our children are learning, and some of the stuff, how they're able to do it instead of maybe the ways that myself or Paul or you, that their technology is like,
right.
part of their DNA.
It's amazing, and what's great is that the library is keeping up with this technology.
It's important.
So we have, you can actually get a library card and check out materials without visiting the library. So on my cell phone, I have an app called Overdrive, and I check out audiobooks and ebooks all the time. All the time. If you tried this a few years ago when we were first getting running and didn't find a lot of top titles that interested you, check it out again, because we have bought thousands of new titles. James Patterson, every popular title that you could imagine, we have it on ebooks available to you, and they're just wonderful. It's so easy to use now, so you can check out wonderful things. And my daughter, 6 years old, knows how to do it. Wow. Yeah.
I feel like I'm behind the times now.
Oh, just come into the library. We'll help you. Oh, okay. That's what we're there for.
All right. We're talking about, we're talking about new stuff, but sometimes old is kind of new and still popular. I believe you have a Lego club.
We do. We do. We got a huge amount of Legos donated to the library, and then also from the grant. So we have started a Lego club, and that really helps children learn the concepts of engineering. Right. We love to see all the children make the creations and a fair number of girls and boys in that class. So when we have the club meet, it's great.
Now, are they just the standard Legos? I believe there's another kind of Lego as well,
Like a
right?
Duplo as well, bigger.
Yeah.
We have some of those. I'm not sure that the grant provided for them, so they may just have been the donation.
Okay.
Those are good for the littler children because they're not so much of a choking hazard. But parents stay with their children. It's all in a supervised environment. We also have an entire World Book encyclopedia that we just got. Did you ever read an encyclopedia when you were a child?
I thumbed through a bunch of doing research for college papers and stuff.
I used to love to get that next installment of the encyclopedia. Sometimes my mom would get them at the supermarket. Sometimes I would go out and save my money and buy them. And I ended up being a librarian. Kevin, I am sort of dorky. I would read the encyclopedia.
It's not a bad thing.
Cover to cover. So we got a new World Book encyclopedia. It's in the children's section. You can come down and check it out. We also have one in the adult reference section. So people can come to the library and learn about all sorts of fabulous topics.
See, the first thing I think of, other than being able to look through an encyclopedia back in the day, anybody who's a fan of Friends,
yes,
said a little too fast. I remember the episode with Joey Tribbiani when Penn Teller came to the door as a encyclopedia salesman.
Oh, hysterical!
And he sold him. I believe it was the V, so he could be able to talk with friends. And what he did, he ended up with his other friend, because everybody else is so educated. Joey's kind of a simple guy, but he sold him the volume that was V, and he's sitting there talking about volcanoes and vulcanizing things. And then, they're like looking at him, and then they moved on to something. He's like,
that could have been my life as a child.
Could have been.
It really could have.
We just got a couple of minutes left. We've kind of gone through the whole half hour. Anything we haven't touched upon, or do you want to kind of close things out with giving folks important stuff like how they can find out what's going on in the library, social media, stuff like that?
Sure. So you can check out the Whitman Public Library at whitmanpubliclibrary.org. You can find us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter, and we always look forward to seeing you in the building. We're open Monday through Thursday from 10 to 8. And then on Fridays, we're open from 1 to 5, Saturdays from 10 to 4. And we really hope to see you in the building. We've got a lot going on.
Yeah, and just to remind folks, some of the great folks that you have working and volunteering with you want to kind of name anybody, or, as far as, who point some of our viewers in a direction to, whether it's Molly or Nicole or anybody like that?
Well, Molly is an expert at technology, and she'll help you if you set up an appointment, rewrite your resume. She'll teach you how to apply for jobs. You can always come in and make an appointment for that. She'll also teach you how to use your new device during a technology drop-in. And then Miss Nicole is just the most wonderful children's librarian, and she will give you a recommendation that will engage your child. So if you're ever looking for something to motivate that reluctant reader on what to read next, you come and you see Miss Nicole.
Thank you so much for joining us here, and we're going to look forward to talking to you more down the road somewhere.
Sure.
And that's another episode of Crosstalk in the books. Until next time, have a great day.
I realized at that moment, these people really needed us. And I was going to make a difference, right here in my community.
Be there for your community at NationalGuard.com.